Yes. So before starting develop this application using Eclipse, I want to tell you some points. What are the prerequisites we need to do in the Eclipse series? First, we need to add the Eclipse. First, we need to add the server to the Eclipse. Any server to the Eclipse. Server is a mandatory to create web services in the Eclipse here. Without adding server to the Eclipse, you cannot create any kind of web service in the Eclipse here. So first we need to add the server here. And here Eclipse is supporting only 3 web service implementation here. One is Axis1 implementation from JAX RPC, and access to Apache CXF from the JAX WS implementation here. But it doesn't support RESTful web services. Supporting in the sense what? It has only 3 plugins: Axis1 plugins, Axis2 plugins, Apache CXF plugins here. So if you are creating web service using any one of this implementation, it will automatically perform all these steps here. Now I want to use Metro implementation. In Eclipse. So Metro plugin is not available in the Eclipse, so that manually you need to do all these steps here. Meaning what? You need to generate the WSDL file using Metro WSDL generation tool. You need to configure the Metro implementation skeleton in the web.xml file. You need to create Metro configuration file, that is sun-jaxws.xml file here. But if you are working with Axis1, Axis2, Apache CXF implementation in Eclipse, not required to manually do all these steps. Automatically Eclipse will do that steps here. Yes. So as we discussed in the previous video, we will create Axis1 implementation web services in Eclipse here. So as we discussed, before creating web service using any implementation, Axis1 implementation, Axis2 implementation, or Apache CXF implementation, first we need to add the server to the Eclipse here. So first let me add Tomcat server to in my system. Then we will discuss how to create web services using Eclipse here. So now just right click on this servers view panel, new server here, and which server you want to add, just you need to select that server and version here. So I want to add Tomcat 7 here. Just click on next button. Browse Tomcat installation directory. We are already installed Tomcat server. So I need to browse that Tomcat root directory here. So that is available in my E drive. So here this is my Tomcat 7 here. So I have selected this one here. So now click on next button and finish button here. So this is the way we can add the server here. So if you want to start the server, in the server view panel, just right click on this, just you can start the server here. Just test it whether it is working fine or not here. If it is working fine, then we'll create. So it is started here. Just check the console also, you are getting any errors or not. So here I'm not getting any errors, meaning what? I successfully able to add this server here. Now we will create the web application here. We will create the Axis1 web services here. So as we discussed here is, first we need to create, what are the steps we need to follow to create Axis1 implementation. Let me remind once again here. First we will create web service, dynamic web project. First we will create dynamic web project, and then we need to create service class. It's a POJO class. Then we need to follow some simple steps to convert cal service into the web services using Axis1 implementation here. So first let me create a dynamic web project. File, new, go to others, there expand web folder. In this web folder, select dynamic web project, click on next button, enter project name. My project name is calculator service. So just I want to change my servlet version also 2.5. Just we need to click on the finish button. Just click on the finish button here. So service class is dynamic web project is created here. So now here it's a normal web project now. It's a normal web project here. And now you can check in the lib folder. We don't have any jar files here. Even in the web.xml file also we don't have. Even in the web.xml file also we don't have any servlet configurations here. Okay, it's a normal default web.xml file. In SRC we will create our calculator service here. So now create cal service.java now. So just right click on this, new class, select package com.durgasoft.service, give some package, and the class name is cal service. And click on finish button here. So it has created cal service.java now. Now we need to add public int, method name is add, int I comma into j here. Just we want to return I plus j. Same way I want to add another method called subtraction method, sub, and here I minus j here. So save this file now here. So what we need to do is, now we will convert this cal service into the web service by following some steps using Axis1 implementation, so that Eclipse will generate required files. As we know what are the required files. One is it will generate the WSDL file, then it will configure skeleton, that is access servlet in the web.xml file with some URL pattern. It will create server config-.wsdd file. It's an XML file. It will be generated in the web folder. Finally, it will copy Axis1 jar files into the lib folder here. So now let me explain what are the steps we need to follow to convert this cal service into web services using Axis1 implementation here. Very simple steps we need to follow here. Just right click on the cal service, new, others. Right click on the cal service, new, others. Expand web services folder. Select web service. Click on next button here. So let me explain some points about this window. Here we are following a bottom-up approach web services here. Actually we have two ways to develop the web services. One is top-down approach, second one is bottom-up approach. In bottom-up approach, first we will develop service class, then we will convert that service class as a web service. And the top-down approach, first we will develop the WSDL file and required XSDs. From that we will generate the required user-defined types and service implementation class. Now we will go to that generated service implementation class. Just we will provide our required implementation based on our business requirement, and we will deploy that service into the server here. So here I am following bottom-up approach because I am creating service class. From the service class I want to create the web services here. So that's the reason by default it is selected a bottom up Java Bean web services, and this is the class, service class. It is converting web services here, converting to web service here. What is the server you are using to deploy your web services here? Tomcat 7. So if you are already added some other servers also in Eclipse, and if you want to deploy it into the other than the Tomcat server, just click on that. You can select the other server here. Here we have only one existing server. If you want, you can add another server, and that server also will be displayed here. You can select that server here. So now I want to use Tomcat 7. I don't want to use other server here. The next one is web service runtime here. This is the very important point here is web service runtime means this URL decide which implementations you are using here. You are using Axis1 implementation, you are using Axis2 implementation, Apache CXF implementation, Metro implementation, or other implementation here. So as we know that in the previous video we discussed, Eclipse supports only 3 implementations here. One is Axis1, Axis2, Apache CXF here. So now here by defaultly it has selected one web service runtime called Apache Axis. Apache Axis in the sense it is a Axis1 implementation. It is a Axis1 implementation here. So just if you are selected this, if you select this URL, it will display what are the web service implementations are supported by the Eclipse here. So let me select this here. Just you can see this Apache Axis meaning what? Axis1 implementation. Apache Axis 2, this is Axis 2 implementation. Apache CXF 2.x, it is the CXF implementation. So by default it is selected Apache Axis means what? Axis1 implementation here. If you want to create web services using Axis 2 in Eclipse, you need to select Axis 2. In the next videos we will discuss about this web services here. We will create web services using Axis 2 and the CXF 2.x implementations. So now we need to select which implementation we want to use to create your web service. So I want to use Apache CXF only, Apache Axis1 only here. So that's why I'm not changing anything here. This is your service class here. This is your project name. This is your project name here. And just you need to click on finish button. Just you need to click on finish button here. So when we are click on this finish button, it internally it will perform lot of things here. What are the lot of things it will perform? No, it will generate visual file. It will configure the skeleton in the web.xml file with some URL pattern, and it will also generate server side configuration file in Axis1, that is server-config.wsdd file here. And finally it will copy the Axis1 jar files into the web.inf lib folder here. Okay, so next what it will do, it will deploy your services into the server also here. So now let me verify all these steps are done by the Eclipse or not. Yes. So first let me verify whether it has generated. Better before verify that, just refresh your project here. Just refresh your project, right click on the project, just refresh here. So here go to the web content folder. Now we want to verify whether it is generated the visual files or not. Go to the web content folder. In the web content folder it has generated visual file folder. In the visual file folder we have this visual file here. This visual file contains your service class details and endpoint URL of the web services here. The next one is it is configured the web.xml. It will configure the skeleton in the web.xml file. What is the skeleton? Which class is acting as a skeleton in the Axis1 implementation? Access servlet here. So now let me verify is this class is configured in the web.xml file or not. So go to the web.xml file, open this here, come down here, come down. We know now this is access servlet, and the fully qualified name of this servlet is what? org.apache.access.transport.http.access servlet here. Okay, so now here this servlet having one URL pattern called /services/star here, /services/star here. So after that, as we discussed, it should be generated one configuration file called server side configuration file called server-config.wsdd file. So let me verify whether it is generated or not here. So come down here. Here we have one tag called service tag. It has one name called cal service. This is the unique name of your service class, which is identified by the skeleton here when our client makes a request here. So you can change this name. The same name you need to change in the WSDL file. Let me open the WSDL file whether we have that URL or not. Okay, that we will discuss now. So in this server-config.wsd file, so you need to configure your name, unique name. You can give any name here is. By default, it will take your class name as a unique name here. So inside this, where is your service class? Where is your service class? This is your service class here. So we created com.durgasoft.services.cal service. And inside this, we have two methods here. One is subtraction method and another one is the add method here. Now, after generating this, after converting cal service into the web services, I want to add another method. Now open this cal service class, add the required methods here. That method you need to configure in this allowed methods parameter tag. Just give the space and then give the method name here. Save it, that's it. So this is the way you can keep on add methods to your service class also here. Fine. So now let me open this WSDL file. In the WSDL file, we know that it contains the name of the service class, name of the methods, parameter types. So again, I will take another session to explain the WSDL tags, SOAP request tags, and SOAP responsive tags also here. So now, as of now, I don't want to explain these tags. We will take some other session to explain this. So now, come down here, come to end here. This is called as a endpoint URL here. This is called as a endpoint URL of your services here. So as we discussed in our previous videos, what is endpoint URL? The location where your service class is running is called as a endpoint URL of the web services here. So now this is up to your port number, we know that, and then it is your web application name, then it is your skeleton URL pattern, then we have our unique name which is in the server-config.wsd file here. No, I don't want to use unique name as cal service. I want to change another name. Yes, you can change it. Now just you can use cal service 1. The same name you need to modify in the WSDL file. Let us say 1. Then you need to give this WSDL file to the here, so that client aware of the new location here. So now I want to use the existing one only here. Fine. Okay. So now here, it has created service and even it is deployed and it start the server here. If you want, you can check here this is Tomcat server. It is started here, and just you can expand this and just verify whether your web service is deployed or not. We can say that it is deployed here. Sir, now after deploying this, just I want to check whether it is successfully deployed or not. What we need to do is, now go to the generated WSDL file. So there you need to select this endpoint URL of the service. Open the browser. Give that endpoint URL and add suffix with the question mark WSDL. Here. So this is called as a WSDL URL here. So what is WSDL URL and what is endpoint URL? Endpoint URL is the location where your service is running is called as endpoint URL, And what is WSDL URL here is, if you are add suffix as a question mark WSDL to your endpoint URL, that is called as a WSDL URL here. So if we use this WSDL URL in the browser, if service provider provides this WSDL file, we can say that your web service is successfully deployed and it is successfully running onto your server here. Right? So this is the way we can create the web services here. Then in the next video, we will create web service client using Axis1 implementation in Eclipse with the diagram we will discuss here.